Have you ever wanted to learn how to make your own notebooks? Stick with me for the next 7.5 minutes and you'll learn how. The first thing you'll want to do is gather your supplies. I use this Fiskars paper trimmer. It has a fold-out arm with measurements, which is really helpful. I also have a bone folder that helps me to get a really good crease on the binding of my book. I also have a couple of different options for poking the holes, an awl, and then just this paper piercer. And I use a tapestry needle because it has a blunt end and a large hole that I can get this embroidery floss through without too much trouble. I'm using some scrapbook paper for the cover and some watercolor paper for the inside pages. The next thing you'll want to do is cut your papers down to size. I was trying to make an A5 insert for my traveler's notebook, so I cut the pages down to 8 1/4 by 11 3/4. It's a bit smaller than A5, but it works, and it's close enough, and the elastics are going to hold it in, even if it's a fraction of an inch off. When you're cutting, make sure that what you want to appear on the cover is within your cutting surface. And just remember that when you fold the paper, whatever is on the right side of the fold is going to be on the front cover, and whatever is on the left side of the fold is going to be on the back cover. I repeated this process with my inside pages. Because I was using watercolor, I chose to do this page by page in my paper trimmer. Normally, I would use a straight edge and a box cutter or a utility knife. But with really thick paper, it was a lot easier to do it this way. Once I had all 5 inside pages cut, you can use a lot more if you're using thinner paper, but with watercolor paper, I thought 5 would be enough because it'll make a book that's 20 pages. And 20 pages of watercolor paper is pretty thick. And then the next step is to fold everything. When I'm using thinner paper, again, I would do this all at once, but because it was thicker paper, I just folded each page individually, and then I stacked them together so that they would form what we call in bookbinding a signature, but in this case, it is the entire book that I'm making. It's just a one signature notebook. Next thing you want to do is find the center, get something sharp that will poke a hole, and poke 3 holes in the spine of your book. I don't measure this because it's not really that hard to eyeball, just the middle and then a hole on either end. After you do that, thread your needle with a string that's about 2.5 times the height of your notebook. Threading the needle isn't as hard as I make it look in this video, but it was a little bit harder because I was holding it away from myself so that it would be in the video range. If you use a tapestry needle, the eye of the needle is really big and it should be easy to get your thread through. The next step is to start binding the book together. You're going to want to go from the inside of the book to the outside of the book so that the end of your thread is on the inside of the book so that your knot is tied on the inside of the book. It just makes for a more secure book and it's less likely to get untied. So then after you've gone from the inside to the outside, you choose one end or the other and you go back from the outside to the inside. And then you take your needle all the way to the other end and go through that hole. And the final step in this is to poke the needle back through the middle hole. And what you want to do is make sure that one end of your thread is on one side of the center string and one end is on the other so that you can tie the knots around the center thread. This is going to make for a really secure book, and it's also a lot easier to tie around a thread than trying to tie a knot just by itself. Also, if you don't do that, the knot is likely to pull through the book. You could leave your book like that if you wanted to, but if you want smooth edges along the non-bound side, you're going to want to get a straight edge and an X-Acto knife or a utility knife, which is what I'm using. And then line your straight edge up to the edge of the book and make several slow, steady cuts along the straight edge. Don't rush this or you're going to have ragged edges that you do not like, which would be like totally against the point of even bothering to do this step in the first place. I don't mind uneven edges personally, so I don't usually do this step, but I'm starting to like it better having the smooth edges, so it's possible that I'll do this more in the future. And there you have it. Your book is done with smooth edges. You can pop this in your traveler's notebook or in your bag and take it along. Do watercolor, art journaling, anything you want with it. And since I had some materials left over and the video wasn't very long, I decided to make another notebook. Literally all I had to do for this was cut the scrapbook paper down to the right size. I just used the opposite side of the one that I had used previously so that it looked a little bit different. And then I folded everything together, poked 2 holes in the middle. With a smaller book, 3 holes aren't as important just because the 3 holes make everything stay together a little more securely, but with a smaller book, there's just less movement. Again, make sure the ends of your thread are on the inside of the book so that you can tie them there. And once you've done that, you can just cut off the ends of the string. You could be done here, but again, I decided to go ahead and take that final step of making a few quick cuts to make a smooth edge at the bottom of the book. And there you have it, a tiny travel watercolor notebook. And it coordinates with the bigger one you already made. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please subscribe and give me a thumbs up. And while you're waiting for next video, check me out over on Instagram at Cagelio. Thanks so much for stopping by.